All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into the incredible and frankly tragic story behind one of literature's most famous families ever, the Brontes. I mean, you've probably heard that line before, right? It's from Jane Eyre, and it just perfectly captures that passionate, kind of revolutionary spirit of their novels. You know, the ones that still fly off the shelves and have been turned into movies and plays, what, over 100 times now? But how? How did three sisters, pretty much isolated from the world, living in this really harsh provincial town, become these global literary giants? We've got to get into this because the real story of the Brontes is honestly just as dramatic and, yeah, just as heartbreaking as anything they ever wrote.
Okay, so first things first. To really get a feel for their story, you have to understand just how huge their success was. It was a phenomenon.
I mean, we are talking about a legacy that is absolutely global. Jane Eyre, Wuthering Heights, these are classics everywhere. They've been translated into pretty much every language on Earth. And their stories, they just tap into something so raw and human, you know? Love, rage, hardship, it's all in there. And it's just as powerful today as it was over 150 years ago. But here's the really fascinating part. This incredible, world-changing talent, it didn't come from some cozy, comfortable, scholarly home. No, it was literally forged in darkness and tragedy. So back in 1820, the family moves to this village, Haworth. And the house, the parsonage, it was supposed to be a step up for them. But get this, it looked right out over a super crowded graveyard. And, well, all that decaying stuff was seeping right into the town's drinking water. Grim, right? And to put that into perspective for you, Haworth was one of the most unhealthy places in all of England at the time. The average person there only lived to be 25 years old. And this is just staggering. 40% of kids didn't even make it to their 5th birthday. It was a brutal place to live. And tragedy just kept hitting this family. Their mom died just a year after they moved in. Then, a few years later, the two oldest sisters died from tuberculosis they got at this awful boarding school. By the way, Charlotte would later use that exact experience to create the cruel Lowood School in Jane Eyre, turning her own trauma into powerful fiction. So now you've just got the 4 remaining kids, Charlotte, Branwell, Emily, and Anne, left with their devastated father. So what do you do when the world around you is filled with death and disease? Well, for them, they escaped inward. Their dad brought home this little box of toy soldiers for their brother, and that one simple gift, it sparked entire universes. They created these incredibly detailed fantasy worlds together, and that forged this unbreakable creative bond between them. And you can see just how wild and witty their imaginations were right here. They made these tiny little magazines, all hand-stitched, for their toy soldiers. And they'd fill them with these epic poems and just bizarre ads, kind of like an early Monty Python sketch. You could already see they were just brilliant, brilliant storytellers. But it wasn't just about their fantasy world. The world right outside their door, the landscape itself, that was a massive influence. You could almost call it another character in their books. When they got out onto these wild, powerful moors away from that grim little town, the sisters found freedom, a sense of liberty. And this landscape, this wild, untamed place, this is the direct inspiration for Wuthering Heights. It's the perfect mirror for the passionate, almost feral nature of characters like Heathcliff and Catherine, right? Okay, but a great imagination doesn't exactly pay the bills, does it? And as women in the 19th century, their options were, well, pretty limited. They had to figure out a way to make a living. And their real-world experience was tough, really tough. They ended up working as governesses, which was this really lonely, awkward position where you weren't part of the family, but you weren't really a servant either. That feeling of being invisible, of suffering in silence, that became a huge theme, especially in Anne's book, Agnes Grey. And for Charlotte, wow, she took a teaching job in Brussels, fell completely in love with her married boss, and got her heart totally broken. So she comes home full of all this passion and frustration and rage and channels all of it, every last drop, into Jane Eyre. And this is the key right here. That iconic, brooding, unforgettable character, Mr. Rochester, he wasn't just made up. He's basically a mashup of her real-life heartbreak over this guy, Constantine Heger, and those grand romantic heroes she and her siblings dreamed up in their fantasy worlds as kids. It's real life and imagination all mixed together. Now, to get published and, actually be taken seriously back then, they knew they couldn't use their real names. No way. So they came up with these kind of ambiguous, male-sounding pen names: Kerr, Ellis, and Acton Bell. And when their books came out, bam! They were an instant sensation. And everyone in London was asking the same question: who are these mysterious Bell brothers? I mean, their success sent a shockwave through the literary world. They had actually done it. But that incredible moment of triumph, it was almost instantly swallowed up by just an unimaginable wave of tragedy.
Just look at this timeline for a second. It is absolutely devastating. In 1847, all three sisters have their novels published. It's the high point. But then, just 1 year later, their brother Branwell dies of tuberculosis. 3 months after that, Emily dies. 5 months after that, Anne is gone too. So in less than 2 years, right as they were reaching the peak of their success, 3 of the 4 siblings were gone.
And just like that, Charlotte was the only one left. She's suddenly famous, but she's totally alone, grieving her entire family, and now she has to figure out how to secure their legacy. With her sisters gone, Charlotte finally revealed who the Bell brothers really were, and the London literary world was shocked. But once the reviewers realized these passionate, intense books were written by a woman, the tone changed. Suddenly the work was scandalous, naughty. So what does Charlotte do? She takes control of the story. She pulls off what is basically a brilliant PR move. She writes a biography about her sisters, and she very cleverly frames them as these innocent, uneducated country girls who, didn't really know any better. They didn't understand the shocking things they were writing. It was a total masterstroke to get the public on her side and shield their reputations from all the sexism of the time. And Charlotte, she did find a little bit of happiness. She got married in 1854. But it didn't last. She died just a year later, while she was pregnant. She was only 38. And her death, well, that was the final, tragic chapter that really cemented the whole Brontë legend. It's what turned their home into the pilgrimage site that it is today. So when you step back and look at the whole story, the isolation, the nonstop loss, this incredibly harsh environment, and how it all somehow fueled this unbelievable, world-changing creativity, it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? It leaves you with this big, lingering question. Does great genius require great adversity? Does great art need great suffering? It's something to think about for sure the next time you pick up one of their timeless books and remember the incredible human cost behind all that genius.